Part 1. The room that was never cleaned. I worked as a housekeeper at a small roadside motel during college. The place was old, cheap, and honestly a little depressing. One Monday morning, my manager handed me a key. Room 18. He paused. "Don't be careful." I laughed. "What, is it haunted?" He didn't smile. "No, that should have been my first warning." The room had been occupied for almost 2 weeks by a man who always paid in cash. Nobody had seen him leave. Housekeeping wasn't allowed inside because he'd refused service every single day. Eventually, he stopped answering the door. Management assumed he'd checked out without telling anyone. That happened sometimes. When I unlocked the door, the smell hit me first. Not rotten food, not cigarettes. Something metallic, like rusty pipes. The curtains were closed. Every light was off. There were dirty dishes everywhere. Empty food containers. Water bottles. Clothes covering the floor. It looked like someone had been living there for months. I opened the curtains. That's when I noticed tiny dark stains on the carpet. Hundreds of them. Some old, some fresh. At first, I thought it was spilled coffee. Then I saw the bathroom. The sink was covered in dried blood. Not a little. A lot. There were bloody fingerprints on the mirror. One long handprint dragged down the wall beside the shower. I immediately backed into the hallway and called my manager. He walked in, looked around for maybe 10 seconds, then quietly said, "Call the police." While we waited outside, I kept staring at the room. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous, just wrong. One officer arrived about 20 minutes later. He walked inside. Less than a minute later, he came back out. His face had gone completely white. He asked one question. "Has anyone touched anything?" We both said no. He immediately taped off the room. Within another hour, there were detectives everywhere. Crime scene photographers. Forensics. People carrying evidence bags. Guests stood outside watching. Nobody would tell us what they'd found. Around lunchtime, one detective finally came over. He asked if we'd noticed anything unusual about the guest. My manager explained the man always wore gloves, even in the middle of summer. He never let anyone enter, always paid cash, never gave housekeeping access. The detective nodded like he'd expected that answer. Then he asked something that made my stomach turn. "Did either of you ever see him leave the room?" He looked back toward room 18. With the red suitcase. Neither of us remembered seeing any suitcase. The detective didn't say another word. He simply looked at another officer and quietly said, "It's gone." I thought they meant the suitcase. I was wrong. 2 days later, the motel closed without explanation. None of us were allowed back inside. And for almost 3 months, nobody would tell us what had actually happened in room 18.